Again, thank you so much to everyone for joining today's winter webinar series. Today's topic is Cloud Managed Prisma Access, a New Paradigm. So a quick recap of what to expect in the next 60 minutes. We will go ahead and start off today with an introduction to Prisma Access Cloud Management. We will then proceed with cloud management vision and key customer values. We will then discuss Prisma Access Cloud Management new workflows, and we will end today with a Q&A session. A quick reminder to everyone that at any point that you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to enter your questions on the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to address your questions at the end of today's session. Also, a reminder to everyone, the next week's webinar is Prisma Access and Data Loss Prevention and IoT, which will be happening next Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Also wanted to give a quick recap of who your Prisma Access customer success tour guides are today, starting off with customer success manager, which is myself, Wendy. Also your Prisma Access customer success engineer, it's Kuram. And today we actually have presenting our Prisma Access Insights product manager, which is Vinod. Also wanted to give everybody a quick reminder as well that if you want to access any of the information that was provided today, you can access those on Live Community and of course, Tech Docs. Also, as you know, today's topic, it's Cloud Managed Prisma Access. Next week, like I mentioned, is Prisma Access and Data Loss Prevention, Data Loss Protection, and IoT. Also, that will end our winter webinar series, but we have really great news. We have already published on our Live Community or spring webinar series, which I'm going to go over some of those topics real quick. So to start off, it will be kicking off on a Thursday, February 10, which will cover Prisma Access industry leading SASE solution. We will then just be covering on Wednesday. So 1 week we'll be having 2 sessions on Wednesday and Thursday, same time, 8 a.m. Pacific time, which will cover on Wednesday, introduction to cloud managed Prisma Access. On Thursday, we will be covering Prisma Access and autonomous digital experience management. And then Wednesday, API support for cloud managed Prisma Accesses, and a lot of actually really great topics, as you guys can see there. So feel free to check out our Live Community where you can see the full version of this with all of our topics that we will be covering. Also, another great reminder that if you're new to this, we actually have a bunch of great a lot of great getting started videos that we have recorded on our YouTube and Live Community. A lot of these topics include license activation, secure mobile users with Prisma Access, onboarding service infrastructure and service connection, onboarding remote networks, and a bunch more of other getting started topics. And like I keep saying, Live Community will be your best friend here. We have not only our calendar or events that we have, but also we have curated content based on where you're at on your journey to deploy Prisma Access. So based on that, you can go and see and gather a lot of the documents that you will be needing for where you're at. We have Cloud Manage and Panorama Manage, like I said, the events and calendars, and learning how to scale and optimize. So highly encourage you all to log into our Live Community. And of course, if you have any support tickets, support issues that you may need to take care of, feel free to log into our customer support portal. There we can not only provide you KV articles and tips, so we can actually get you situated with any issues you may have. A lot of these issues are usually easily handled right away. So feel free to check out our customer support portal for any technical issues. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, Vinod. So he will be taking it on from here.
Thanks, Wendy. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all the attendees. Thanks for taking the time out, time to actually attend this presentation. So today I'm going to give a very quick introduction and then the overview on Prisma Access Cloud Management. The agenda is really to just give you a sneak peek into what are the benefits of the Prisma Access Cloud Management platform, and also go into some of the workflows that we have created with Prisma Access Cloud Management. This presentation is going to be a combination of slides and then as well as like a demo where I'll actually show the product, and then I'll walk through some of the advantages that I'm going to actually talk about. Quickly, to talk about the security management solution today. So what are the complexities or what are the challenges that we see commonly with the network security management solution? The first one is obviously complexity with respect to the multiple different types of configurations that is there, deployment, different types of deployments with respect to the security configurations based on different use cases. And then also operations, right? So how do you actually automate policy management, right? I mean, all the security policies which are being actually configured, are they in use? They're not in use. How do you go and then clean them up, get more visibility into all the security configurations which are in place? That kind of ties into the security posture as well. So some of the things that I talked about, the security posture is more of looking at like, have you adopted the security configurations with keeping the best practices in mind? And if not, like, do you know which are the configurations which don't comply with best practices? Where do they not comply with best practices? And then also, the features that you do not use, what are the impact on the network, or what are the impact on the applications for not using those networks? So these are the three common pillars of how the challenges, what kind of challenges are there in the network management solution today. So just kind of tying those challenges and then trying to actually find solutions in order to actually attack those challenges is what the Prisma Access Cloud Management platform that's one of the reasons the Prisma Access Cloud Management platform came into being. Just to give you a little background from the Prisma Access is actually a cloud delivered security service. Prisma Access traditionally has been managed by Panorama. Panorama is actually a management solution which was born when there was a need to manage multiple or n number of firewalls, right? Managing every single firewall, configuring security policy on every single firewall became too laborious, so the management platform was born. But again, I mean, as we moved to cloud, right, we started offering security as a service with Prisma Access. There was a need for the management layer also to evolve. So that's where the Prisma Access Cloud Management came into being. So as the title says, it's a unified cloud management solution for the entire Prisma Access, right? So when we talk about unified, Prisma Access has like multiple different types of deployments today, multiple different types of endpoints, right? So it could be global protect mobile users, explicit proxy recently, remote networks, service connections. So taking all these different types of deployments or different types of features together in Prisma Access. So we have a unified cloud management solution in order to configure this security as a service, which the customers can actually easily onboard users, easily automate security policies, easily get a view in terms of what are all the best practices that they're actually complying to when they're configuring policies and stuff. So we do have new workflows, right, in order to actually simplify onboarding and then also kind of reduce the time required to onboard onboard number of remote networks or the service connections or the mobile users and stuff. We do have continuous best practice checks in order to make sure that the security policies are configured with best practices. Like anybody who is actually familiar with configuring security policies, authentication, decryption profiles, there are actually multiple different types of configurations, knobs out there, right? So in order to keep track of best practices on your own is going to be a challenging task. So we have incorporated the best practices into the product itself. Of course, when we talk about feature parity, we have feature parity with Panorama. So obviously all the features that are supported in Panorama today, so is supported in Prisma Access as well. We do have a comprehensive reporting capability, which gives you an idea like what are all the threats that were actually being blocked, and what are all the different category severity of threats that were actually that the users encountered, and then also like what are the different types of risky URLs that the user visited and stuff. So there is a comprehensive and then actionable reporting available. So just to summarize, the Prisma Access Cloud Management Platform is really like a next generation platform, which simplifies the workflows to onboard different types of users and networks into Prisma Access, keeping best practices in mind, and then giving a good visibility into giving a good visibility into the number of users, where they're accessing, what kind of threats they ran into, and stuff. And this is a truly a cloud native service. So this is actually given as a service to our customers. So which means that there's actually a cloud managed service which we actually give it to our customers. So keeping up with the recent trends in terms of the advantages of a cloud-based solution offering. So just to kind of actually talk about the vision that we are actually going with cloud management, some of it like I briefly covered. We talked about the config management and security optimization. This is again going back to continuously monitoring the traffic and then the configuration to deliver policy automation, which means that we continuously monitor the policies which are created, recommend best practices in terms of what needs to be enabled, and then also monitor the policies for like unused policies, unused objects, and then help customers identify and then like notify customers saying that they have policies and objects which are actually unused, and then to remove them if not needed, so that they can actually prevent any kind of security loopholes into the network. Also, we proactively monitor the health and then the user experience assurance. So I'm going to show the product where we have user experience solutions like ADEM, which is actually closely integrated with the product. The idea here is like the idea is we want to provide a single management solution where Prisma Access infrastructure, SaaS or DLP, with the introduction of the NG CASP services, SaaS and DLP configurations also are available from a single console, along with the health monitoring or the user experience assurance solutions like ADEM. They're all available in a single solution. And then also providing more of security visualization and reporting. This is something that I talked about, where it gives more idea into what are all the threats that were actually blocked by the solution itself. And then like if there are additional threat related features and stuff, if you incorporate those features, like what advantages do you get, how you can actually increase your security posture, how you can increase your security effectiveness of the solution itself. So all these information is going to be available through this cloud management platform to the customer. So just to kind of actually talk about a little more points on the advantages of the cloud management is, obviously, I mentioned that it's a cloud delivered solution. So it's literally zero maintenance. Palo Alto Networks, we take care of the upgrades and stuff. The customer doesn't have to worry about upgrades as we've done with Panorama when it's actually deployed on-prem. Easy onboarding, I will actually kind of give you an overview on the workflows and stuff, but I have more detailed sessions coming in the next 2 months, like which talks about details of like configuration, and then onboarding of remote networks and then users into Prisma Access using the cloud management solution. And then there I will go into more details around like how we have simplified some of the workflows with regards to user ID distribution or with regards to quarantine, like all those things. I'll go into a little more detail and then explain how we have actually simplified it in the cloud management orchestration or the cloud management product, in order to help customers effectively and then quickly onboard users and then networks. So obviously this is a scalable and secure infrastructure. You don't have to worry about scale and secure. It's a cloud native solution run as microservices. So depending on the demand, so we auto scale the related components. It's ISO 27001 and SOC 2 Type 2 certified. And feature set wise, we work pretty closely with Prisma Access. Like we make sure all the Prisma Access related features which are released, we are in line, and then we release those features when Prisma Access releases come out. So just to kind of actually talk a little more about how we are sticking to the cloud native principles or a cloud delivered security, cloud delivered management solution here is, we have a monthly cadence in terms of feature releases and stuff. Every month we release features. So that means that like any feature request that you may have, or any kind of bugs or issues that we find with the product, given that we have a monthly release cadence, we fix those issues, or we come up with features at a faster rate as compared to a non-cloud based product. So the advantage that the cloud management solution has is, because it's actually a cloud delivered solution, it's a cloud native solution, we have a faster feature velocity. So just to kind of that was a quick overview on the cloud management solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the product just to show, just to give you an idea in terms of like how the product looks like, right? So just to give you an idea, this is obviously a demo setup that I have in my lab. So just to give you an idea, so on the left pane, so you have insights, which actually gives you more about like configuring, or this is actually more about how your remote networks users and all the stuffs like alerting and all those things, like you get it here in the insights. The configuration is something which is actually done here on the left side. There is a manage tab. This is where you do the configuration. And then when I talked about the user experience and stuff, the autonomous DEM sits as another icon or a tile on the left. So where you can actually go configure user experience and stuff. I'm going to just make sure that I'm in the right tenant. Okay, there we go. So just to kind of not to lose track, the insights is where you get all the alerts and stuff. Like you can look at like how all the configurations you've done with respect to the Prisma Access infrastructure, how those are behaving, the tunnels, how many tunnels are up, alerts, and then any kind of notifications with respect to like Prisma Access upgrade and stuff, right? Then below is the autonomous DEM. This is where the user experience comes into play. So again, one of the points that I talked about is having like a single unified management. So just trying to actually reiterate that point. And also here is where like most of the configurations and stuff happen. This is the manage tab. And then below the manage tab is the activity tab. Think of the activity tab as just like the logging, and then where you get reporting and logging. So essentially reporting and logging is actually covered under the activity tab. So this is again like something that I talked about, where you get an idea in terms of, hey, what are all the applications that the users have been accessing with in terms of risk. It gives an idea like about all the like if there is a SaaS, if there is actually a SaaS product involved, then how many unsanctioned, sanctioned app like did the users visit, and then the usage risk by users and stuff. So there is a lot of data that the logging and reporting gives. So jumping back into the manage, this is where the configuration workflows and stuff come into picture, right? Obviously, any security admin wants to get an overview in terms of hey, how the network is doing, right? So the overview tab kind of helps in giving that overview. Obviously, given this is a lab environment, like I was actually playing around with some configurations and stuff, you can see that my remote networks, like I'm actually committing some config. The config is in, the commit is in, or the push is in progress. Global protect, I chose like not to commit some configuration to global protect. That's why it says that the configuration is out of sync. Like when you push those configurations, like whatever you configured in the candidate config, once you push those config, like obviously it will be in sync. The explicit proxy and service connections, all the configurations that you configured, they're in sync with the data plane, of course, right? Obviously, just like you're used to the Palo Alto firewalls or the Panorama, you can have the config snapshots, compare the config snapshots with candidate config or between like multiple different configuration snapshots and stuff. And here is where it gives you like what tenant IDs that you have with respect to your Prisma Access tenant ID, your obviously serial, store the logs and stuff, have access to those logs. And then also the cloud management, this is the Prisma Access Cloud Management tenant ID. So it gives you information about all the tenant IDs that are involved. So one of the things when I talked about like how we simplify onboarding, so this is actually one of the very important features of the cloud management. So if you want to onboard mobile users and stuff, so obviously with like other products, you would actually go read the admin documentation and stuff, right? So what we've done is in the product itself, we've actually created onboarding workflows where you can click on remote networks and sorry, let me go back. You can click on launch walkthrough, and then it will just walk you through the configurations in order to create remote networks. So the launch walkthroughs are available for most of the networks and then the users that you need to onboard, and then also like creating security policies and then decryption and stuff. So, and like as and when we come out with new features and stuff, we try to actually bring in the walkthroughs as well, so that onboarding users and networks with newer features, like it becomes more easier for customers. I'm going to actually talk about the optimize and then the security posture best practices a little bit. In order to see if the network is actually satisfying all the best practices, so obviously there is actually a summary window where if you have already used Prisma Access, you know that there are multiple containers like mobile users, remote networks, global proxy, and explicit proxy. These are just the different types of containers which are there, like based on the users of the remote, based on the users of the network. So in fact, you can drill down and then see, hey, if there are different configurations for mobile users, how they are doing with respect to best practice. Overall, the shared config is like the overall config, like which goes on all the containers, like how the overall network is doing with respect to like best practices and stuff. The optimize also, the idea with optimize is like if you have certain rules which are like overly permissive, or if you have certain rules which are not used, or if you have certain objects which in fact like you configured it but you're not using, that could become like a potential security loophole, right? So it will remind you saying that, hey, I mean, there are some unused objects, there are some zero hit objects, you won't actually go clean it up, right? Because you're not using them, right? So, and then the policy optimizer rule as well, it gives you an idea saying that, hey, there are certain policies where you can actually go and then split those policies or merge them in order to actually make your rules more specific. right? For example, this particular rule here, which says SD-WAN internet bound allow, there is traffic going to like certain destinations, and then there are traffic which is not going to certain destinations. So it actually splits those rules, and then it says that, hey, do you want to actually split this rule, which has like a more generic rule, into like more specific rules, so that you can actually monitor properly. This is again like an ML based optimizer, which actually looks at the logging or the serial data, the logs, which are network logs, which are received, and then it actually comes up with this optimized recommendation saying that, hey, here is your original security rule, which is overly permissive, and then I created more specific rules, right? So end of the day, what you can do is, if the first and the fourth rule, there is a lot of traffic, and then for the second and third rule, over time, you don't see a lot of traffic, you can essentially make your rules more specific and then remove the second and third rule, where you don't see a lot of traffic match at all. That way, you're eliminating any kind of security gaps within your security policies itself. So that was a quick overview on Optimize. So I want to just quickly go through the configuration, and then I'll talk about best practices a little bit. So just to give you an idea, the service setup is where most of the infrastructure related configurations are done, right? So for example, I need to configure anything related to Global Protect, onboarding Global Protect users and stuff. So this is going to be done in the Global Protect configuration. So the same thing with explicit proxy. I want to actually set up an infrastructure to enable explicit proxy, and then have users connect to Prisma Access through explicit proxy. The configurations are going to be done here. Remote networks configurations with respect to creating tunnels, bandwidth management, how the bandwidth should be assigned to each compute location. Everything will be done here. And then creating remote networks also can be created here. You can see a bunch of remote networks already created here. So just think of the service setup as when you're onboarding users or when you're onboarding networks, the infrastructure is going to be created here. The same thing with service connections as well. One of the simplifications in the workflow that we have brought is, like, for example, when you create remote networks here, you have the configuration that is creating the IPsec tunnels, and then also creating routing and stuff. They're all in a single workflow or a single window, rather than like jumping across multiple windows and stuff, just to make it easier. So once the infrastructure is set up, so what you would do is you would actually go to the configuration tab, right? The configuration tab is where you would actually go define the security policies and stuff. So also here, the idea, just give me 1 second, security policies. So also here, the idea is the idea here is for the admin to give an overview on, like, hey, all the security policies that you configured, like what you're missing in terms of the best practices checks. Like I said, a policy has like multiple components which are involved, and then tracking, and then keeping up with like all the best practices and stuff becomes like, if you need to do it manually, it becomes a lot more laborious. So the product does it by itself. Like soon after you configure or you create a security rule, the best practice checks, the best practice checks automatically happen, and then you get a message, or you get like you get automatic notifications like this saying that, hey, why the best practices failed, right? There were like almost a couple of checks which were done on this security rule, like allow ADEM web server IP, and then you can see that there was no app ID enabled in the security policy that failed best practices. Just to keep the security policies more specific, create a description for the rule, right? So a description wasn't created for the rule. So it exactly gives you where was the problem. So here, like once you go into the rule, you can actually see all the checks which went through, right? And then all the best practices checks which actually failed, and then it gives you like why it failed and what you need to do in order to correct it. So this is actually more of a best practice. Like soon after you write a security rule, the best practices come into picture, right? And then like in terms of the adoption, also you get an overview saying that out of the rules that you've created, how many rules have adopted app ID, user ID, and content ID. This gives you an overview in terms of, hey, are you properly using the features in order to actually have a stricter security posture for your network or not, right? So again, the best practices the best practices happen at shared level. Like if you have policies specific to, let's say, global product under mobile users, the best practices can happen on those as well. So it's pretty granular in terms of, and then we cover all the scenarios more than granular, right? So any rules which are specific to a particular container, we run best practices for all of them. And then we give you an overview saying that overall, what is the best practice for mobile users? What is the best practice for remote networks and SC connections? What are they? How are the best practices lining up? Quickly on the rule base as well, what we've done is we have actually simplified some of the things, like essentially configuring the profile groups and stuff when inspection is involved, bringing in like all the options that is needed in order to configure the security policies, just trying to make it more and more easier. And also like schedule if you want to actually put the rules somewhere like on top of the policy or like before or after, so all those flexibilities are available as well. If you look at the security objects and stuff, so what we've done is we automatically create best practices rules for every profile. And like when you create a security policy rule, the best practices rules are adopted by default. And obviously you can actually go and then change the threat protection profiles to like different threat protection, customized threat protection profile that you've created. But the idea here is we already provide like a best practice threat protection profile. So the admins can actually write policies faster and then secure their networks faster. So that's one of the ideas as well. So you will see the best practice profiles and policies kind of across like vulnerability protection for wildfire antivirus, even for DNS security. So all the file blocking and also here in the URL access management. So all the profiles we have pre-packaged best practices already built that you can actually take and then you can adopt when you're creating security policies. Even with decryption, we have like newer flows, and obviously we create decryption based on best practices. There are default policies that are created based on best practices. You can actually go change those as well. And then the under decryption, we have all the decryption related configuration under the decryption tab itself, just to actually make it more easier for the admins to configure and then look at the decryption configurations and stuff. I'm going to just pause here for a minute, just see if there are any questions. We do manage Prisma by Panorama. So in Panorama, is there an option to view best practices for Prisma that you showed? I'm not so familiar with Panorama, like how the best practices adoption happens and stuff. But I can actually take a look and then I can drop you a note afterwards. But to the extent of the best practices profiles that we have, and then also the best practices that we adopt in terms of security policies, I don't think it's there in Panorama. I can actually confirm that this is one of the differentiators for the Prisma Access Cloud Management. Okay, I think that was the only question. Quickly diving into another topic for cloud management as well. So the other topic is recently what we've done is like obviously having the single UI for Prisma Access infrastructure configuration, and then also SaaS and DLP, they're actually commonly adopted. by the enterprises today in order to secure their environment. So what we have done is we have, in fact, like if a Prisma Access customer has the DLP and then SaaS security licenses, if you're familiar when you go on the hub, so there are like different apps for SaaS security and then DLP. We actually brought those apps into, or we are rendering those applications in the cloud management UI itself. The idea here is obviously now it's a single UI for the security, data loss, and then the SaaS admin, right? So they all can use the same UI. The standalone apps are going to be there in the hub, but essentially we're trying to simplify the experience, have a consolidated view for an enterprise who actually purchases DLP, SaaS, and then Prisma Access together. So this is a recently introduced feature where, like if you're familiar with the DLP and then the SaaS security apps, we are rendering those into Fox itself. So if the customer has purchased the license for DLP and then SaaS security, so we essentially render it in the in the cloud management UI itself. So that's one of the advantages. And then like all the thing to keep in mind here is these applications are run as something called a micro front end. It's a separate container. And the SaaS security and then the DLP security teams, when they're working on newer additions and stuff, they own this container or the micro front end. They can actually develop features and then they can actually push it to the UI at a faster rate. So in a way, they don't have to wait on the cloud management engineering or the QA teams. They in fact can work on their own and then bring features on their own, speeding up the feature velocity as well. That was a very quick overview on the configuration. So I want to just show the visualization and reporting as well. Like I said, the visualization and reporting gives idea into how the network has been performing, what are all the applications the users are visiting, and how much data was transacted. Users, like how many users were visiting. Like obviously today we see an explosion in SaaS apps. How many unsanctioned, sanctioned apps the users were visiting. You have to actually control the usage of unsanctioned app a little more. You get a complete view. And then obviously, just like if you need to actually go view the logs, so we have the log viewer here. The logs, which are actually stored in serial, they are actually available here. So just like the firewall panorama, so you can actually switch between multiple types of logs. And then also, like I said, we are bringing in DLP and then SaaS security. So any SaaS security related information that is needed for reporting or viewing, that's available here as well. The same thing when the DLP incidents are caught, like the DLP incidents are actually visible here, like what are all the DLP incidents that happened, and the admins can actually go and then take a look like they do with the DLP app as well today, saying that, I mean, just to get an idea that what are all the different types of DLP incidents that were caught. So just to kind of summarize, insights is where you look at like alerts and stuff, your tunnel is doing up. Is it up or down? And the autonomous DEM is actually more of a user experience, like how the what is the user experience for your users in the network. The manage is where you would configure the infrastructure and then the security policies. The activity is where you look at dashboards or reporting and stuff. So this is how the product is essentially kind of on a high level designed. So in the next sessions and stuff that I'm going to be doing, I'll be actually running more in depth into like all the onboarding mechanisms, like workflows and stuff, in order to give you an idea, saying that how we have simplified some of the onboarding mechanisms from complex configurations, making it easy, abstracting the complexity. So what are all the things that we have done? So that was pretty much like what I wanted to cover today. So there is just one topic that I wanted to finish off with is just for the internet security. Just for the internet security today, what we have built is we have built a framework called web security. So this is again another workflow which is available for the cloud management product only, where we see a lot of in the customer networks, we see security admins who deal with just internet security, like who do proxy configurations and stuff, and then internet related security policies. And then there are security admins who deal with like internal traffic, securing internal traffic. This is actually more of sorry, I think I may have to log in again. Just give me 1 second. This is actually more for the internet security folks, how internet security admins, how they can actually go simplify the web access policy application. So what we have done with this framework is we have actually further simplified. When you define a policy today, in the security policy, you can either say that I want to allow this application, I want to allow this URL category, or I want to deny this application, I want to deny this URL category, right? So if you need to actually write a policy for a particular user group, like what is allowed and what is denied, you may have like multiple policies that you may have to write. So what we have done is we actually simplified that, where in a single policy, you can define the user group, and then you can say that what web applications are blocked, and then what web applications are allowed. You in fact can actually go down to the detail of, let's say, if there are like app functions. I'm going to just pick I'm going to just pick, say, Gmail. So you can actually quickly go and then you can say that what applications, sub-functions that you want to block, right? If you compare it with the traditional security policy, you would have to actually go pick the sub-function and stuff. So here we give you like all the sub-functions which are available for a particular application, and then you can say that, hey, I don't want to allow upload, right? And I want to allow download, but I don't want to allow any upload. Posting, I don't want to allow any posting, right? So once that is done, like it will show up here saying that what are all the applications which are allowed, and then what are the applications which are blocked. You can do the same thing, like what are all the URL categories that you want to block, and then what are the URL categories that you want to actually allow. And then once that is done, like it's a single policy you can apply, and then on the back end, we actually take that complexity, and then if there are multiple policies that we need to send it to the firewalls for it to understand, we actually do that. So simplifying the internet security policies also to a greater extent. So all these things in the next coming webinars, I'll actually go into the little more detail and cover the advantages more in detail. So that was pretty much all I had with the webinar today. I'm going to just see like what are the other questions, if there are any. Okay, Panorama Brian, I think Kuram has taken that. But Wendy and Kuram, we can open it up for Q&A if there are any questions.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Can we go to the, I think there's I think another.
slide.
Yeah.